Fellow procrastinator, Sam here, and if you guys have been watching my channel for a while now, you guys would know that I'm a big fan of Sega and Sega's old consoles, and one of the main things that I really liked Sega doing was making the Sega Genesis Mini. Now, you guys already know the initial story with the whole thing where at first At Games was going to be making the console, and I voiced my concern about it very loudly, mind you.
Sega, what the hell are you thinking?
My concern about Sega or At Games making the console for Sega, and of course, thank goodness, Sega came around to their senses, heard the feedback from people like me, from people from the community saying, you know what, this is not a good idea. The Sega Genesis was a major part of Sega's history, and we cannot get this wrong. And thankfully, they didn't. They fired At Games. They decided to go with M2, who was actually really good at emulating games, and they made the hardware in-house by themselves, and it all worked out. And the Sega Genesis Mini is fantastic. Again, I recommend everyone, if you're a Sega fan, a Sonic fan, doesn't matter. If you love Sega, get yourself a Sega Genesis Mini. In fact, I have mine right here. I love this console. It is made with quality. It has a good number of games on here, a great selection of games. Yes, I know Sonic 3 and Knuckles is not on here. It's a big bummer. But besides that, it's a very solid console. Runs beautifully. Comes with 2 controllers. It's amazing. I love it. And you can also get a Retrobit controller, a 6-button controller that will work with this. So yeah, you guys know the story behind that and how it went. The console did well. People were relatively happy with it. And the next question was, what about a Dreamcast Mini or a Sega Saturn Mini? Because we want more. And Sega came out of left field and gave us a Game Gear Micro. Can I talk about that for a second? Yeah, I don't know what Sega smoked between the Genesis Mini to now, but the Game Gear Micro is not a good idea. It is like $50 each, and each Micro has 4 games on it, and each Micro has different colors. There's a blue, there's like a yellow, and each one has a different set of games. So if you want to get all the games, you have to buy all 4 of the Micro machines, and each one's $50, so do the math. You're gonna be paying about $200, and I heard there's actually a 5th one, so I think it's like $250. I'm not sure. All I know is it is a ridiculous amount of money to play on a machine the size of a keychain. Not for me. It's definitely a collector's thing, and I really think Sega probably could have approached the Game Gear Micro better. That's why I think they're only doing it in Japan, because I think they know it's not gonna sell well because the business model is horrible. So that's my thoughts on the Game Gear Micro. I love the Game Gear. I liked the games that were on the Game Gear. I wish they, treated this with a bit more seriousness. They didn't just, cater it to just collectors. I wish they made it a slightly bigger, maybe the size of a Game Boy or DS or something, and they shipped it to the US and put it at a reasonable price with all the games. That would have done well. I don't know why they completely missed out. So besides that sideshow, a lot more speculation went about okay, so what's next for Sega in terms of the mini machines here? Because people like them. I like them. I think they're a great way to have a throwback console rather than just porting your games to a new system, which they should still do. If you want to get that old retro feel, I think, the classic consoles are the way to go. And many fans, including myself, said, okay, you know what? Let's keep the train going. They did a great job with the Genesis Mini, so let's do a Saturn Mini. Let's do a Dreamcast Mini. Let's keep this going. And thankfully, we had an interview with the Famitsu magazine with Okanari, who I think is the creative producer of Sega. Let me make sure. Yes, he's the creative producer at Sega, and he did an interview with the Famitsu magazine where they talked about, the future of Sega's mini consoles. And this is what they had to say. It's pretty interesting. For the next mini console, we are considering everything that has been imagined by everyone. Of course, it doesn't mean we can realize all of them. We are also thinking about projects that nobody has imagined. And I think when he says projects that nobody has imagined, of course, I think he's talking about the Game Gear Micro, as... I don't know why they thought no one would imagine that. I mean, I think for a split second, even in probably one of my past videos, I mentioned the possibility of bringing some Game Gear stuff back. I wish they brought that project, they went about that project more seriously and actually, catered it to more people rather than just collectors. But I also think this might be talking about the Saturn. Now, you guys already know the story behind the Sega Saturn. It is essentially Sega's Wii U. It didn't sell all that well, outside of Japan. And it came out in a weird time, in a weird era between, actual 3D with the Dreamcast and the Sega Genesis after 1994. So it came out in a weird era with the 32-bit systems, and it is definitely a weird console, but it definitely had a lot of treasures in it, a lot of great games. And I think it would be a great way to throw back to that console is to make a mini version of it. And I hope they aren't referring to the Saturn here, because it sounds like, they may think that no one would want that. And I'm pretty sure there's a market for it. I'm almost certain there is a healthy market there to make a Saturn Mini and for people to buy it and to make a profit. But I also think this next quote here might shoot down the possibility of a Saturn Mini. The projects are moved by a substantial amount of money, so we're working first on the one that, realistically speaking, has the highest probability. And I think that might be shooting down the possibility of a Saturn Mini, because I know some people scratch their heads like, should we make a Saturn Mini? Is it a good idea? I think they should. Again, I think there's a market there. I think there's enough classic games that probably deserve, a retread with the classic console without being ported like Knights. Like, I think playing it on a Saturn controller on a mini Saturn console is like the best throwback you can have for those games. And honestly, if you think about it, because these mini consoles are kind of all the rage now, if you're not going to do it now, it's never going to happen. The Saturn will never see a throwback if it doesn't happen now. I think this is like the only window the Saturn will get if the Saturn ever were to have another, reproduction of sorts, any sort of mini console, anything like that. I think this is now the time for the Saturn to really, kind of have a retread. And I guess it's probably not going to happen because it sounds like they want to take the realistic route, the one that would take the most money or bring in the most revenue. And while from a business perspective, yeah, that's smart. And I'm not denying that I'm sure most people would want a Dreamcast rather than a Saturn Mini. I think there's still room for both. So yeah, from this quote here, I'm going to just take a wild guess that they are definitely talking about a Dreamcast Mini and that they are working on a Dreamcast Mini. If not, what else could he be talking about? He could also be talking about the Micro, the Game Gear Micro, and how they only released it in Japan. But I think they are talking about new projects, new things they want to work on, and stuff that we realistically should not expect. And I think that's what they want us to shy away from thinking we might get a Saturn Mini. But hey, I could be wrong, and I hope I'm wrong, because I would like a Saturn Mini. I would really like one. The Game Gear Micro is only sold domestically in Japan. When we do the next one, I feel like the project scope will be much bigger as we gaze upon the world. So we won't be able to release it at this time the next year or two after the Mega Drive Mini. We can't make it that quickly. I think for the next one, we may go with a concept close to the Mega Drive Mini. If I had to say some names, it could be an SG-1000 Mini or a Dreamcast Mini. Now, the SG-1000, now that, talk about left field, okay? I already thought, the Game Gear Micro may have been a bit of a stretch. This one, I don't know. The SG-1000 is way before my time. I don't know much about it. I'm pretty sure it's an 8-bit console. And I also think they had 3 iterations of it. I think they had the Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3. I could be wrong here. I'm not going to throw anything off the table. I think the SG-1000, I think that would be cool. Again, it's something I'm not familiar with. It's something I never had. So I feel like them making a mini console would be perfect for me to grab it, to pick it up as a Sega fan. I'm not sure how a casual audience would go about that, but I think that's part of the reason why they want to go with the project that is more realistic to them, that would probably sell the most. If they do make it, I hope it's not just a Japan release. That seems more realistic though. If they were to make an SG-1000 Mini, it might be a Japan-only release. But now let's talk about the Dreamcast Mini, which he named, and I think this is the first time we had anyone from Sega really talk about a Dreamcast Mini. I could be wrong. I think they may have mentioned it before, the possibility of making one, but I think this is the first time I think I've heard them mention a Dreamcast Mini. And yeah, I love that idea. I think it is the perfect idea. I think, consumer-wise, for the casual fans and for Sega fans, it is perfect. I think it's right up there with the idea of making a Genesis Mini. Now, of course, like the Genesis Mini, this is important here, all right? Because while the Genesis Mini was your golden egg, Sega, the Dreamcast was your last hurrah as a hardware, business here. The Dreamcast, while it didn't sell all that well, was way ahead of its time. It had online capabilities. It did a lot of things that consoles didn't adapt until years later, until Sega went third party. So it's really important. I think that they really give this as much attention and as much quality as possible. And I think because of that, it might be a bit more expensive of a console. I hope it doesn't end up being like the PlayStation 1 micro console, which I don't know if you guys heard, but like, well, that one was okay. I think the games felt like they were emulated a bit slower than usual, and I think the selection of games they chose for the PlayStation 1 was not good. So again, I think this is a really good idea from Sega to really try to push a Dreamcast Mini. Because, you know, let's be real here. I think Nintendo is definitely going to do a Nintendo 64 Mini, which I would love, and a GameCube Mini. They're definitely going to do it. And I think this is good for Sega to kind of try to be the first to try to push for a mini console in that era. If they could beat Nintendo to the punch, I think it might be a good idea. While the Genesis did good, it was behind the tails of the other two mini consoles released by Nintendo. So the surprise factor wasn't all there for Sega. And while it did sell well, I imagine, I'm sure they probably could have sold more if they were the first to make that punch. So I hope that they are prepared to really push for quality if they were to make a Dreamcast Mini. I think it is imperative that if they do it, they do it right. Just like I said with the Dreamcast, or with the Sega Genesis Mini, they need to do it with the Dreamcast. They gotta give it their all. Make the hardware as close to the original as possible and emulate it perfectly. And not to mention, the Dreamcast is a really unique console. Even it had a VMU attached to the controllers, and I think they should do that again with this console. Have the VMU attached to the controllers, and again, it would be a very unique experience and would let people experience stuff that they can't experience with emulators. For example, I wanted to play Sonic Shuffle recently with some friends, and the only way we could do that realistically nowadays is to emulate it. The problem is a lot of emulators don't properly show the VMU that is on your controller, so we couldn't play Sonic Shuffle correctly because we couldn't see our own cards because it would be on the VMU. So if they were to make a mini console, this is the perfect opportunity for them to put the VMU on the controller and to let us replay games like Sonic Shuffle that can literally not be played now unless you do some heavy digging to have the VMU be emulated as well. So speaking of games for a possible Dreamcast Mini, Sega has to not make the mistake that PlayStation did made with the PlayStation 1. They have to throw all their best hitters on this console. I think Sega realized, when they didn't put Sonic 3 on the Sega Genesis Mini, that may have cost them some sales. So they really got to throw everything they have here. And I don't think they have any restrictions outside of maybe Crazy Taxi with its music, but I think they could really put all their games into this console. And I'm talking about Sonic Adventure 1, Sonic Adventure 2, Sonic Shuffle, Crazy Taxi, Jet Set Radio, Skies of Arcadia, Phantasy Star Online. There's a lot of amazing titles here. And in fact, I asked on Twitter what people would like to see, and here's some of the things they said. Fighting Viper 2, Project Justice, Capcom vs. SMK 2, House of the Dead 2, Virtual Cop 2, Power Stone 1 and 2, Choo Choo Rocket, that is definitely going to be on there for sure. Crazy Taxi. Now, Crazy Taxi did have a lot of copyrighted music in their games, and while I love the I love that shit, I'm sure Sega might run into trouble. So hopefully they could pay the royalties to that band, because I love that music. I think that music is intertwined with the history of Crazy Taxi. If they can't, just change the music. I hate that idea, but do what you have to do, Sega, okay? Shenmue 1 and 2, I think that is also a must for me as someone who is trying to get in. Once I'm done with the Mario Marathon, I plan on going to the Sega side of things and playing Shenmue and Yakuza. And for me who wants to get into the Shenmue side of things, this is perfect for people like me who want to jump in on the Shenmue series. So please, Sega, put Shenmue 1 and 2 on the Dreamcast Mini if you decide to do it. Got a request from Victor McKnight, also shout out to him. He says Sega bass fishing, which, as much as people want to joke about that, I'm also all for it. I have a lot of friends in my friend circle that love Sega bass fishing. While I don't see the appeal, apparently a lot of people love Sega bass fishing. So I guess why not put it in there? I'll give it a try. We got other stuff like Soul Calibur, Hydro Thunder, Cannon Spike, Space Channel 5 Part 1 and 2, which again, I would love to do. Space Channel 5 is another Sega series that I have not played on the regular console. I played on the iToy game for Sega Superstars, but I'd love to play the original, and I'd like to play both parts. So hopefully, if they do decide they put both parts in there. Samba de Amigo, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2, Marvel vs. Capcom 2, House of the Dead 2, Daytona USA 2001. So I could go on and on for recommendations for games to put in the Dreamcast Mini. You guys put a lot of them. So if you guys want to see more of the recommendations or put your own recommendations, definitely put it in that thread there. I definitely want to see people's recommendations, and hopefully when the time does come, I can look back and see if people's wishes were followed through. And you guys know me, I'm a Sonic fan. I want, again, Sonic Adventure 1, Sonic Adventure 2, and Sonic Shuffle. I think those are a must, especially if you're gonna have the VMUs on the controllers. Definitely get Sonic Shuffle in there. I feel like there's no easy way to play Sonic Shuffle, and it'd be a great way to let people play Sonic Shuffle again. And I'm gonna be honest here, while I think the Sega Genesis Mini wasn't that hard of a console for Sega to do or to make, I'm just gonna say right off the bat that I think the Dreamcast Mini is a way more ambitious project for Sega. I think it is a way harder system to create and to emulate. Again, while the Genesis Mini, while it was important for them to make sure everything's emulated correctly, when it comes down to space, Genesis games don't take that much space to put onto a mini console. Dreamcast games is going to be a different story. Dreamcast games can get quite large, to a couple gigabytes, I'm sure. So I'm going to assume that if they do make this console, they're probably going to be limited by the amount of games they could put. I hope it's more than 10. I generally hope that they can go for maybe 20 to 25 games. I think they can do it. I really think they could. It'll be hard. I don't know. I'm not familiar with M2 making stuff outside of the Genesis games, so I hope that they can emulate 3D games as well. They'll probably have to get other people. I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with that. Let me know in the comments if you think M2 is capable of emulating 3D games. They probably have before. I just would not know. But yeah, I think it is important that if Sega were to make this Dreamcast Mini, that it is made well, a plethora of amazing games to play. Have at least 2 controllers so people can play multiplayer games with their Dreamcast. Have the VMU on the controller, and it's going to be an ambitious project. It's probably not going to be that cheap of a console. It probably will be maybe around $100, to be honest. So I hope Sega brings out their big guns, treats it with quality, gives us a bunch of games, and I have no doubt that this would sell like hotcakes. People love the Dreamcast Mini, or the Dreamcast, and the idea of a Dreamcast Mini, people would absolutely love that, myself included. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I do have a new video in the works coming very soon. So again, thank you guys so much for all your support. Please be sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. With all that said, I am Sam, signing out. See you later, procrastinators.